Frankly, like I made a video on this, like I do like around $25,000 a month from clients alone. The thing that keeps coming up every time is that they need to stop looking at the metrics and start looking at the ideas more. They stole one of our shorts and it got like 90 million views. We're very salty about that. Niche transferring is definitely my favorite way to go about it. It's just a fun way to try and make your own bionic puppet. Like we take the arm from that niche and then we take a hook from a completely other niche and that's the legs. And that's what I do most. I think one of the biggest things you need to have as a strategist with your client. Yeah, I'm Leroy. I'm 31 years old. I just turned 31. Still doesn't sound right, but I guess that's my age now. Live in the Netherlands. And I've been on YouTube ever since before it was cool, kind of like when you still got bullied, when you were like making videos for people. Like I think my first videos was like 2008, 2009. And been on the platform for all that time, built 2 businesses in between, and now since almost 2 years now I'm back full-time on YouTube as a strategist, not like necessarily as a creator anymore. And yeah, I've worked with a ton of creators now. I don't even remember everyone that I've worked with, but I've worked with some big gaming creators back in the day, like Doom49, like those kind of guys. And nowadays I worked with, help start up new travel channels like Chris Takes Off. I work with someone who Fex knows really well as well. We Are No Code Christian. His plaque just got added to my wall. So I work with entrepreneurs, I work with entertainment creators, I work with faceless dog channels right now, and you know, kind of blew up quite a few channels in the past year or so, and that's what I'm kind of iterating on right now, just helping people become creators and kind of go a little bit against the grain of the YouTube automation gurus and try to fight them every now and then, and you know, tell people why you should do YouTube and make it a sustainable living.
I mean, obviously I know you quite well, and I've got some questions based on that. Maybe we can start off, and you know, you kind of mentioned that you were doing YouTube before it was cool. I'd love to know how you kind of got started into that. Like, you know, what kind of made you like, oh, I'm gonna do YouTube, and then from there, you know, turn it into a massive career? Because like you're, in terms of like YouTube strategy age, you're ancient, right? You've been around forever.
I am ancient, yeah. You didn't have to say it that way, but you are right. I am ancient. But yeah, no, so this dinosaur over here, this living fossil, I think I started like every young man ever started on YouTube. They played video games and they thought that the world needed to see them play video games. Nobody needed to see my Call of Duty clips. Nobody really wanted to see my FIFA clips, but I thought they would. So, and I figured out back in 2008, 2009, it was pretty hard to actually capture gameplay, especially if you were on like a console. And so that was like a huge thing that I was into. I was like, okay, I need to like get the most crispy footage, and I'm gonna put that on a video sharing website. And back then, like YouTube was on the come up, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna put it on there, and then I can show my friends like I'm actually really cool. And some of my friends thought, but once they started finding out in my school, that's when they were like, you make videos about gaming? Like, don't you go outside? I was like, sometimes. But that's how I started all the way back then. And then I kind of stopped for like a year or two. I think I still uploaded. I was very creative. I loved making videos, so I stole like, you know, for legal reasons. I didn't steal it. I borrowed my mom's camera, and she never saw it back. But you know, I borrowed the camera, and I loved making videos and trying to figure out like, you know, action scenes. That was something that I was really into. So I had a friend that was also really into filmmaking, and we started making like short films and that kind of stuff, and we posted them online, and some got some mediocre success. Like we had a few that did like 40,000-50,000 views. But then in 2012, that's when I started working together with my then business partner that turned out to be later my business partner. And he was really into gaming like I was, and he was really into filmmaking. So we were like, okay, did we just become best friends? I guess we are now best friends. Like we love the same things. And he had a brother who was really good, especially back then, with visual effects and 3D animation. And we were like, okay, we can take our love for gaming and we make short films about gaming with all these explosions and really cool effects in them. And that's going to be like our job. Back then, Rocket Jump, I don't know if you guys know what Rocket Jump is, but Rocket Jump was like, that was the premier channel together with like the guys from Corridor. And those were the only two that were, and Devin Supertramp, I think, like those were the guys who were doing it in the US, and we were like, okay, we're going to do the same thing, but in Europe. We're going to be the Europe channel for that. So we started making short films, got a few that did really well, like above 1 million views, and had videos that were actually stolen to Facebook. I remember the page exactly, Legendary Auto Sports and FX. They stole one of our shorts and it got like 90 million views. We were very salty about that. Wow. and they took it down. Oh no, they gave us credit 4 weeks after it stopped getting views, so it was perfect, of course, for their end. But we saw like, okay, this has a lot of legs. We just ran into a few problems, and one of it was that, you know, these videos took us like 3 weeks to make. Like, it was just like with the visual effects and all that stuff, it was not gonna pay our bills in any like way, shape, or form if we wanted to like live a somewhat comfortable life. But we did work with a lot of, you know, game developers together with them. Like Ubisoft is some client that we work with a lot. That I still have like a lot of memorabilia here that we got from them, like very limited stuff. We did a short film for Watch Dogs, for example, the first one.
Wow.
Game was a bit of a letdown, but our short film wasn't. So we did like stuff with them. We did some stuff with EA. I remember we did stuff for Sniper Ghost Warrior back when that publisher was still a thing, or like the developer. So we did all that stuff, but we realized back then YouTube was a bit different, especially the algorithm. You were a bit geo-locked. If you uploaded a new video, your video would get pushed like in your geographical location first, and if it did somewhat well, then it was like an oil spill. Like then it started like going overseas. And we had a problem that we were in the Netherlands. And if there's one thing, I don't know why, but that Dutch people, especially back then, didn't like, if they heard somewhat of an accent, they always type the same comments. You're Dutch. Just make Dutch videos. Why do you make English videos? Make Dutch videos. So that was a big problem we ran into. We're like, oh man, maybe we should commit and, you know, go to the US and do it there, like live the dream. But eventually we figured out like it would not be a great idea to just leave everything and go to the US to make short films about videos, video games and stuff. So we started our first creative agency. We did what we did on YouTube, but now we did it for the brands on their channels. And ever since then, I've ran that for 8 years with my partners, so the two guys that I started the YouTube channel with. And all the while we were building that, I was still working with other creators, friends that I've made back then, YouTubers that were really relevant back then. I helped them come up with new ideas and stories, and I was really into like the storytelling part of YouTube. So I did all that, eventually sold my shares there, did like a year of soul searching, and realized like YouTube is my place. And I came back full time, and now I do what I'm actually destined to do, and that is work with other creators and help them level up in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes it's, you know, the money side. Sometimes it's even, I feel like an unlicensed therapist. I don't know if you guys like can also feel that, where it's like, you know, you talk to creators that have certain issues or they run into like emotional roadblocks, and I really, really enjoyed that part of my work together with, you know, marrying like the concept of making a good video. And that's what I do, man. That was the very long-winded version of my come-up.
When you came back to YouTube, why did you choose the path of YouTube strategist instead of YouTuber?
So one thing I realized when I got older is that, so I have ADHD. And one of the things that I hate in my life, and I wish it wasn't...
Like 90% of people here.
Yeah. One of the things that, like for me, how it manifests, one of the things that I figured out when I got older that I hate, and I wish it wasn't the case, is repetition. I don't like doing the same thing every day. Even if it's like, you know, the thought of, for example, having a job where every morning at 8 a.m. I step outside, I see the same neighbor, like Groundhog Day, right? Like it was like morning neighbor. I get stuck in the same traffic. I eat the same bagel for lunch, like all that stuff. It just makes me really sad. And one of the things that I didn't like about when we still had CFX Squad, that channel, was that I kind of felt like we only could do short films in the gaming niche, where it's like, you know, Daisy robbery in real life, or like Battlefield trolling in real life, like that kind of stuff. And I was like, man, but I also want to do like about movies and stuff like that. And so I realized being stuck in a niche for me is like, that's the same feeling as repetition of like every day turning up to do the same thing, figuring out, okay, this video did well. How can I do the same video again without it being the same video, right? So that's kind of like the issue that I ran into. And I realized over the years when I came back, I was like, I love the dynamic nature of being a strategist. And in the morning, you can think about the golf niche, and 2 hours later, I'm thinking about, you know, the tech world, and then an hour later, I'm talking to someone who's in the entertainment market. Like that keeps me sane and my days fun. So that is the biggest reason why I figured out, especially with like the 10 plus years of, you know, business experience now that I have in my backpack and knowing like how it is, you know, to run a big business, I was like, I would sell myself short if I would just make a channel around a thing. I want to do all the channels. But I can't do all the channels, but I can work with all the creators with all the channels.
I mean, I'm very much the same way. I tell Richard that I hate doing the same things over and over, so I always have to like kind of like move around like every few months, do something different here, do something different there, just because like if I did like the same thing over and over again, it would drive me insane. Especially like when it like comes to working with clients. Like I like working with different clients. Like you said, like some days it's like okay, 9 a.m. work with a stock channel that's based out of Hong Kong. Then like 11 a.m. I've got to work with like the biggest Roblox creator in the world. Then it's like I don't know 2 p.m. I have to talk to like an anime channel, and then like all on the side like I'm taking messages from like a roster of creators like in the NBA niche, like in other sports niche, like other gaming niches, right? So it's a lot of fun. I know you've been on YouTube forever, right? You kind of like documenting the come up. I'd like to know how you've seen YouTube evolve over the years and how you kind of reinvent yourself, because it's one of the things that I struggle with, which is like roughly every 18 months, I feel like I kind of like plateau or like I kind of hit a limit. And then after that, I'm not necessarily too sure how to go about it's like breaking it. Eventually, like, you know, you overcome it. But how do you like constantly reinvent yourself and stay fresh in terms of like YouTube, being creative, because this job will burn you out so fast sometimes. And yeah, just would love to know your kind of process about that, and maybe you have any advice for people who are in a similar position, just starting out, or you know, kind of already doing it.
Honestly, the fun thing that I see with YouTube is that I always keep the mindset of like, I don't know jack shit. Like I don't know anything. Like I have success here and there, and I hit success here and there, but I don't have the mindset that I cannot learn from you or I cannot learn from Richard. I can learn from anyone and everyone. So for me, it's like YouTube is a constant evolving process of, hey, there's this new niche or new trend that's happening, and then I want to kind of understand. Like I always keep that like kid-like curiosity about like, why does this work? Like I don't understand why this works, and I need to understand if I want to keep my job and stay relevant at some point, right? Like listen, I also go through that cycle where I have, you know, a bad week where it's like, you know, I think it's also a myth that people think like, oh, YouTube strategists, like they know everything or they need to know everything. Like, no, we're also humans. We just study like the whole market more than, you know, you are stuck in your market, and it's our job to pull you out of that and show you the birds and the trees. You know, like, okay, stop looking at the ground, look up. Like there's way more out there. So for me, it's just a constant process of staying humble and understanding that I don't know anything. And when I have a bad week, and that happens, when I have a week where, you know, like there's 3 mid results with clients in a row, and you start questioning everything, and like, am I like, was it all luck? Like, was the past 12 years luck? Like, I can't imagine, right? Like, I have those moments as well, but I think one of the biggest things that you can do with that, also as a creator, is have people around you that you can talk to about that. And that you can just be vulnerable with, be like, yo, you know, like if I would feel bad, I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't have the ego to not text or message you, Fex, and say like, oh, Fex, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing to, like, what would you do in my situation? I think that's one of the most powerful things and stances you can have. And, you know, how has YouTube evolved? Honestly, and a lot of people don't agree with me when I say this, but for me, YouTube back in 2012 was harder than it is now. Simply because the platform wasn't as sophisticated as it is now. Like I was constantly battling the geo stuff. I was battling, you know, like figuring out how could we get our, you know, our ideal viewer, and that is like a US based audience, and it was just really hard for me as a European guy. So for me, like YouTube back in 2012 was way harder than it is now. But the biggest thing that I've seen like evolve is that now literally anyone and anything can start a YouTube channel and make it so successful that it can replace their job. If you want to, that's the second thing, but that is more possible than ever. Without trying to sound like an automation guru here, it's like your laptop can replace your 9 to 5. Like, no, it takes a lot of hard work and sacrifice, but that's the biggest thing that I've seen change over the past, I would say 10 plus years, where it's like anyone can start this thing. If you really want to, you can.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great answer. Like, you mean it democratizes attention, right? Like anyone can tap into like this massive attention market thanks to YouTube. And I know you said that YouTube now is easier than it is before, but I still see creators make mistakes all the time. I wonder what you think, or what you see rather, is the biggest mistake creators make, and maybe like, you know, one piece of advice on how to fix that.
I think the biggest like, let's say we're talking beginner creators, right? So people who are just starting out. I think the biggest problem that I see a lot of creators run into is that they kind of make videos that they think they would want to watch, and they don't really do research into like, okay, but who am I actually creating for? I have a ton of creators who were like, I made these 3 videos and they got 50 views. I don't understand it. I really like the videos. I was like, okay, but did you validate that your idea was a good idea? There's one thing that doesn't lie, and it's the market. Results don't lie. And sometimes for some niches, it doesn't even mean like look on YouTube directly, but it's like looking at entertainment as a whole thing. Look on Netflix, look on Amazon, look in books, anything. Like, have you validated that there was once attention for this, and there was once someone who got success with this? And a lot of people are like, no, I just kind of thought it was a good idea, and so I made it. So then I say like, okay, you spend 10 minutes on coming up with the idea. Is that fair to say? And they're like, yeah. And then I started recording. I was like, okay, that's fine, but let's switch it up. You took 25 hours to edit this. 10 minutes of that was for the idea, like coming up with the idea. Let's switch it. Let's do 25 hours of ideas and 10 minutes of editing. And let's see how that goes for you. And that's like, there's a reason why on Twitter I constantly say ideate and conquer. And that's like kind of like the thing that I keep drilling into people's brains. They're like, just spend more time on the idea. And a lot of beginner creators do that. They forget that step. They just kind of like, oh, this is a good idea. And they start making.
Right, like that's something I see all the time. That's why people hire us, right? Is like to do the ideation for them if they're at that level, right? Because like there is like some more, I guess you could say, bespoke methods that we use, and obviously they're paying us for our kind of like understanding the market. And I want to talk about that a little bit because it's kind of relevant to paying us for the market. Is you launch a channel or help launch a channel with your friend Chris Takes Off. I'd love to, I don't know if you can show us the back end, or if you could break down maybe the channel with a screen share and the launch strategy specifically, because this is like the really nerdy stuff about YouTube. Because I thought you had probably the most intelligent launch strategy out of any like new channel I've seen this year. And that's even coming from my own, because I launched a channel this year as well. And I thought I had a good launch strategy. And then I saw the Chris Takes Off stuff. I'm like, there's no way I'm competing with that. That was genius. I'd love to know if you could walk us through that, maybe pop up a screen share and explain to the viewers how you came up with that.
Yeah, I can show a little bit. I'm not going to show the whole channel because I haven't, of course, like talked to Chris about this. I don't want to, make him mad. I can open the YouTube studio and show the first set of videos that we did together. So for the start of that channel, so just a little bit of backstory. Chris Takes Off is his Dutch name is Jeroen. Chris is his middle name, but Jeroen is just a hard name for a personal brand.
Yeah, Jeroen. It's also hard to remember.
Exactly. So he really he realized, okay, I need to use my middle name, Chris. Chris, he had a faceless channel before this, and before that, he worked for another like huge creator at the time that he built a channel with, and he always had this dream of like doing a travel channel. So we kind of got in contact with each other at the same time. I met Leander Justical on YouTube, and we kind of like talked a little bit because we were in the same country. We were all 3 in love with YouTube, so we were like, why not meet up, like have a beer and just talk YouTube all night and just be nerds.
When was that?
I think like mid last year.
Oh,
I think somewhere there. Like
that's
maybe,
when you 3 met, basically.
Yeah, I think maybe August, September of last year somewhere. We kind of got in touch that way, and Chris and I like hit it off from the beginning. Like he was really into YouTube, I was really into YouTube. We kind of had the same brain in sense of like he could throw up a title and I would immediately know where he got the title from and vice versa. So it's just really good like natural energy. And he told me that he wanted to start a travel channel, that was always a dream he had, but he was scared to start it. So I told him like, listen, if you really want to do this, I'm more than happy to help you with this first series to get it off the ground, and then you have like a flying start, and then you can take off yourself, no pun intended, with the channel name. So what we kind of came up with from the beginning is that I knew for a fact that Chris is really good at packaging, and I was way better than him at storytelling. So we were like, okay, you focus on packaging, I'm gonna focus on getting these story beats out for you, so we can make a format that's repeatable. So one of the things that I really wanted to do and that we landed on pretty quickly and he agreed with was that I wanted to make the first upload actually a series that you can watch standalone. So if you would like jump in on day 7, you wouldn't feel like, oh, I miss a lot of context to understand where I'm at, because the intro of every video is the same. It's just a different airport. It's a different, place where he's going. But the text is the same. The setup is the same. We use the same kind of theme song. So if you would step in on day 7, you could go back to day 1 if you'd want to, and then, take it from there. And that was, so we landed on a 14-day series of doing a proven concept that we've seen work in the past. And actually around that time, a few bigger channels also came out with a similar idea. So it was kind of a bit nerve-wracking, because a week or so before we uploaded, Beta Squad did the same video. We were like, crap, this might saturate the whole format. But, you know, we kind of already have like 12 days recorded, and he's recording day 13 and 14 now. So we had to commit. So we did a lot of work with Laird, the thumbnail designer, to make sure that we honed in on like a style that we wanted for the channel. We have, and I can probably, maybe I even still have the story beats that I can show you of the first video. I'll find it. But so what we did is we just literally went for a daily upload, so that we have a lot of data to feed the algorithm, so we could have a flying start. And it's all the same format. So the strategy was, let's not change the format. We're doing the same thing for 14 days in a row. And that's going to be like all the data we're going to throw at YouTube. Like, okay, look, this is all the same shit. Just look at this, understand who we want, what our ideal viewer is. So when it took, I can probably show you here, it took a little bit of time before it started like taking off. Like it was after like 15 days where YouTube really started seeing like, oh, okay, we understand now. And you can see the famed, and I hate it, the stare pattern, where it's like on a new channel, it's like, oh, testing, new viewer profile, testing, new viewer profile. So that's kind of like how it went, and especially this first video, it got pushed out to a lot of different types of viewers. You can see as well by the chart that the AVD there is crap in the first video, but it did get a lot of good numbers. We got 6,500 subscribers just from that first video, and it had a snowball effect on the rest, right? So of course it got a little bit less over time because like the real hardcore fans stayed, but we had two things that we really wanted to hit, and one was we gave the YouTube algorithm a lot of data on like, okay, this is what we're brute forcing this. We're doing travel, social, mix that together. That's this channel. And what we did is we gave viewers a lot of data to understand who is Chris, and what we saw from the aim that we had, and that also became really apparent, was that we built like a pretty strong core audience very fast, because they had a lot of Chris to watch. And of course there was a lot of, I've done a lot of engineering on the back end, like, okay, I want you to like do more of this on camera, or I want you like, okay, we're going to leave out all these moments. So there were some moments that every day kind of like Chris called me, and I would say like in this 14-day series, he had like 3 nervous breakdowns where he's like, I'm quitting. Like, fuck this. I'm done. I'm not going to do this anymore. And I had to like kind of talk him off the ledge, be like, yo, you got this, man. Where are you now? And then he got food poisoning. It was even worse. So he had one day where he didn't do anything. He got food poisoning, and I think in Albania or something. And it was crazy. It was very, very hard for him. And like really kudos to him, like how well he did. But on the back end, I was really like focused on, okay, making sure like the complaining stuff I don't really want in the video. Like I want to build Chris as, a happy-go-lucky, like what he normally is guy. So we were really like, I was really focused on the branding and the storytelling part of all of this. And yeah, it gave him a flying start. I think we hit 15 or I don't know actually like what we hit then. I'd have to check, but it was pretty big growth in the first. I think we hit like 10K subscribers in like a week or two after launching. And then, you can see like this is where the whole series took place. And then he took a long hiatus after, like he was pretty burned out after starting with a 14-day series. But yeah, this is his channel. So that's how we started that whole thing. It was a pretty planned thing that we did. It wasn't like luck. We really thought this through really, really hard. And yeah, that's how we went by it. So it did pretty good numbers for a first series on a channel.
It was an interesting blow up. Was that your best case study, or do you have other case
it depends studies? Like if you would say like numbers wise, because I'm not that into like the numbers in the sense of like, oh, this creator got 70 million views. I was like, okay, that's cool. But I'm way more into like, I have one client, for example, Chad, who does like between 300,000 to 500,000 views a month, but he makes like 50 to 80K a month from that number. Like that is like that marriage between like a good back end and a good viewer profile and a good funnel. Like that is what's really interesting to me. But so it depends on like, if you ask me like what the best is, like numbers wise, probably not. But this is definitely one that I'm most proud of last year, simply because how much we've crafted. Like if you look at how strong his core audience is, it's pretty insane. Like it's pretty crazy with like that amount of subscribers and that amount of views, like how many people like message him and like how he grew on Instagram and all that stuff. So in that sense, I think this is one of the most proud moments I had of last year. But also one of the most stressful ones. Absolutely. I told him, I'm never doing this for anyone ever again, and especially not for free. I don't care if you're my mother. Like this is not happening anymore.
It's quite fulfilling for you then as a YouTube strategist to see those creators like blow up, right? How many channels do you work with?
So right now, on one-on-one basis, I work with. I need to look at my list. I think 9. Across
the board, what have you seen working for all of them? Like tips that you've given that help them grow?
So one universal thing, it depends. Like there's not one universal thing, I think, but one thing that keeps coming up every time is that they need to stop looking at the metrics and start looking at the ideas more. Where like most of the people that I work with, they are like, oh, CTR is low on this one. Or like, oh, my AVD is crap on this one. I was like, what? There's a lot of subtleties that we don't see in YouTube Studio that can influence that, right? So I have, with clients, normally I have like a cycle that I test in. So we do 3 surefire, let's say we upload 4 times a month, right? Like once a week. I want to have 3 surefire videos that we know are going to do well for the core and casual audience. And I want to have 1 experimental. Why? If that experimental hits, we have another format that we can, take back in the bucket and use as like, kind of you're building your deck, right? Like you have a deck of cards and you just add a few like more power-ups in there that you can use when fewer fatigue starts kicking in. And that is one of the reasons why, for example, sometimes a video has low CTR the first week or so, that we know like, okay, like the core might not really like this, but I think it can, I think it has potential for your channel. And then after like 2 months, like everything starts shooting up and they're like, whoa. And I think that's the biggest thing universally, that every creator I talk to, they are very married to the metrics, but they forget that the metrics can sometimes be very polluted without them even thinking about like, okay, but why is my CTR low? Or, hey, my AVD is like 10% lower than normal. Well, is it a broader audience, people that don't care about you? Have you thought about that? Like, well, yeah, that could be the case. It's like, okay. So I think that's the biggest one.
You talked about being like a therapist earlier, and the biggest reason like I have to be a therapist for my clients is they just get sucked into the YouTube dashboard and they're like, what does it mean? It's a 10 out of 10. And it's like, it doesn't matter. Now there are like some like very like weird edge cases. Like recently a client had a 10 out of 10 that was not supposed to be a 10 out of 10 and we knew it. And it was a YouTube problem. But like besides that, like you'll actually like see like a client, like I got a 10 out of 10, like my life is over. Like, what am I going to do? And it's like, hold on, this is just data. And like, also, it's a 10 out of 10 now, but like if you give it a week, it might be a 1 out of 10. And like sometimes it climbs up to 1 out of 10, and it's like you worried for no reason, right? And then it's like there's no reason to worry even if you do get a 10 out of 10, even if you like invest money and time into it, because it's like, oh, you just learned like an expensive lesson, but at least you learned, right? So that is something I definitely understand when it comes to the interrelationship with like clients and then data and then the YouTube dashboard, which is like the most evil thing. It is my antagonist.
Absolutely. And I think everyone, like including myself, has been guilty to that at some point in their career, where it's like, you let the YouTube Studio get to you. It's like, dang, a 10 out of 10. Crap. Like, oh, I had a good day, but now my day is ruined, and I probably should stop doing anything that I plan to do. But yeah, it's definitely something like growing up on YouTube, like maturing on YouTube in that sense, is really understanding like zooming out. That's a problem that I think a lot of creators have, and also clients I work with. Is like, okay, but like think about the timeline we're looking right now. You're looking at a week. Do you want this to be your career? And everyone's like, yeah. Like, why are we looking at a week's timeline? We should be looking at 5 years. And that's one of the things that I do with every new client that I work with. I want to know their 5-year goals. And a lot of them are like, what do you mean? Like, for YouTube? I was like, no, for everything. For your life, for, do you want to start a family within the coming 5 years? Where do you want to live? Do you have expensive taste? Do you like watches like Vexian? Or do you like, are you like, I want to be in the jungle in a hut? Because that is what I want to think of. Is like, okay, if you are a creator, you want to make this your career, and you're telling me, in 3 years I want to live in Dubai, I want to have 7 Lamborghinis, I want to have 12 wives, and I want to be able to travel the world. It's like, okay, maybe we need to make some different decisions now that will enable you to have that lifestyle in 3 to 4 years. But a lot of creators think about like an upload. That's their timeline. They're looking at like, oh, this upload, my life is ruined. It's like, zoom out. You know how many people have duds throughout their career and how many of those are there?
That's a great point when it comes to timeline, because I had like basically the same conversation with the client verbatim. It was actually not even a client, it was my partner on Couch Co-op, and they're like, hey, like this isn't like working, you know, we've had like a string of like 2 or 3 bad months where like videos aren't cracking 10K views, and it's like when I started working with them, like, hey, like the timeline when we started was like, this is like a 10-year project. Like we got like crazy success in the first 3 months, and like the chance of like that falling off was like pretty high, right? But yeah, so it was a conversation we had, and it was like, I'm like, yeah, like I wasn't even like look at the data until like the first year, and then we could like make some decisions for like year 2, right, and year 3, because like essentially and also like what you said, like, you know, if you have 3 like, you know, surefire formats, and then you have like some misses, right, because like you might just be testing things. Sometimes you test and it hits, and then you scale, right, when you stack in the deck of cards. That happens with a client I work with named Clouds. Like we've started working together for like I think like a year, gone from like 300,000 subscribers to 1 million. But it's like, let's just test the deck, right, and then we'll test it, we like get a winner, and then everyone in the market copies because they don't have any strategists, so they're all like, oh, I gotta copy, right? But like because we're working on a timeline that is years, like we can like take calculated like bets, and like sometimes we miss, sometimes we lose, but it is like that whole timeline thing. Like if you're gonna be doing this for all your life, and like you look at like a week by week basis, like that sounds pretty miserable.
It is, and you know, like you can't ignore like signals, of course, that your channel is giving you, but getting caught up in it, I think that's, you know, one of the things that, especially as a strategist, you can't have, because I'm looking at 9 to 12 channels a week. So imagine if like 4 of those channels have duds in 1 week. Like I don't know what I would jump out of the window if I would have that same mindset, because it's like, okay, my life is ruined, everything's over. So it just doesn't. If you want to have like some type of like good mental health, and you want to make this an actual career, just don't get caught up in the numbers, and get caught up in the ideas, get caught up in making better stories, as well as in educational channels. That's definitely something that I've been focusing on a lot. Like if an educational creator comes to me, it's like, okay, we just need to make more entertaining videos. It might sound weird, but it's like, you know, a lot of people learn better when it's entertaining. We all have that teacher, right? Like back when we were younger, like that one teacher that made the subject interesting because they were good at making it entertaining. It was like, fuck, never thought I would like math, but this guy, he just makes it understandable to me.
Still hate math.
Same. I can calculate for shit, but you know,
Yep.
I had to come up with an analogy here.
It's a good analogy, but
I'm curious about your work process as a YouTube strategist, right? From the moment you start working with a YouTuber, what are you looking at to start off? And yeah, what's the whole process to grow that channel over the months?
Yeah, so the last thing, and this sounds a bit weird, and I get a lot of DMs actually about this from other professionals in the market, that like, yo, what's your strategy to get clients? Or like, I don't have one. I just kind of exist. Right. I yap a lot, and then people DM me, and then like the biggest part of my process, honestly, and this is gonna sound so woozy, but this is actually true, I promise. I kind of want to see if I vibe with the person, and if I feel like, okay, could this in another world be a friend of mine? Could we be friends?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, like the last thing I look at is the numbers or what kind of channel they have. Like I don't really care, because most things on YouTube are like, you know, like universally adaptable. Like you can adapt them to any channel, any niche. I remember when I started working with a golf channel, I'd never done golf in my life. I didn't know what below par or under par, above 50. I had no idea what it meant. I was like, but this guy's pretty cool. He seems like he's very passionate, so I want to work with him. And now, like, the work's on me. I need to figure out what the fuck golf means and what a golf club is, right? So that's when the work started for me. So my process is really beginning with, okay, I want to get on a call with you and just kind of chat. Like, yo, what do you do? What kind of channel do you have? And what are your goals? And what's your life been so far? You know, what do you hate? Like, I want to know what shit they hate about YouTube and what they love about YouTube. And if I feel like after that conversation, like, okay, this guy is actually, Infection was actually at one of these talks with this guy. Like I had a call with him, and I just wanted to know, like, okay, do we have, like, is there synergy? I think one of the biggest things you need to have as a strategist with your client is have synergy. Be on the same creative wavelength. If you're not, you're constantly going to try to fit a circle in a triangle hole. It's just miserable for both the client and for you. Yes, you'll make some money for a month or two, but then, you know, you part ways, and that's kind of it. And I think I'm in that sense, I'm pretty big of a, like, at least from what I see and what I hear, I'm an anomaly, because most clients I work with for 6+ months at least. And most clients don't want to leave, even if we have a bad month, because they know, like, bigger picture. I've trained them to look at the bigger picture, and they understand, like, okay, we had a bad month, and then the next month we have the best month ever, and everyone's happy. So my process is really organic and really energy focused. Not like, I wish it was like I could give a more smart answer here. It's like, I look at this data and if I see that data point and that pattern, and I don't have that. I want to talk to you. If we vibe and I feel like, okay, this guy's going to take shit from me and I can take shit from them, because I'm not better. I'm not a better human. I'm not better at anything. I just know YouTube more. If this person is going to be honest with me and tell me when I'm a dick, vice versa,
right, and
we trust each other with this channel, let's take it on. Let's run it. I don't do it right now because I'm full, but like if I would have a spot, like that's the biggest thing I look for. It was the same with Daniel, for example. I worked with Daniel Bitten for quite a while. But he was just such a fun kid to me. He was like 16 at the time when we started working. I was like, dang, this kid is a unicorn in every sense of the word. Like how he thinks about life. Like he is not 16 in his head. And I was like, and I told him literally, I was like, I'm gonna treat you as my little brother, but I'm also gonna treat you as any other client. I'm not gonna sugarcoat things. I'm gonna curse as much as I do to my adult clients. You want to work in an adult world? We're gonna be, we're gonna take this as an adult company, and we're not gonna play kids games here. And he really loved that. And then he needed someone full time, and he couldn't. Right. We couldn't get to an understanding of like doing full time things.
That's one of my favorite part of being a YouTube strategist, is to meet those YouTubers in real life and just hang out with them. And what you said about the vibe check, that's definitely number one. Like for me, it's like no assholes. For that, never. And all in the goal of increasing quality content online.
Yeah, and leave your ego at the door. That's the most important thing for me. Like, there's no ego here. Like sometimes I'm wrong and I have to say like, fuck, I missed the mark with this hook, or I missed the mark with that packaging. And I'm not afraid to say that and be like, I fucked up this time. But if you have that bond together, that, you are in the trenches together and there's no one is better than the other, and you just both work on the same goal, it's way easier to take that than when it is like when a creator. Sometimes I had that, I had calls where a creator started, I'm of course not going to name names, but they're like, listen, I understand YouTube very well. I want you to know that. But I'm struggling with this packaging. I was like, if you know this really well, like, why am I here right now? Like, right. With all due respect, like, I don't want to waste your time or my time. I don't really like the way you started that conversation. I wish you all the best, though. I might know another guy, he's maybe interested, but it's not for me. Like, leave your ego at the door. You need my help. I want to help you, and I want to become a friend of you, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that's true for most people, but except for Vexian, who's always right. So
always right. I've never been wrong, actually. Never once have I ever been wrong about YouTube, ever. My favorite ones are when the creator's like, you are wrong, and then a month later, turns out I was right. And I've got receipts of those, and I look at those every so often when they talk back to me. I swear I do. And I'm like, listen, you've been wrong many, many times in the past. I was right. I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, I have a little thing to touch on about the creators that are like, I know YouTube really well, are the worst creators. That's like a red flag, because like you don't know YouTube very well. Like you're operating on like false assumptions and premises. Like you think you understand YouTube, you have no idea, which is why you're talking to me. And like anytime, and Richard's been on some of those calls where like I'm not gonna name names, but like pretty big creators, like let's say 1 million+ subs, he's like wanted to work and reach out. Not all the case, not all the time. Some are actually great, but some are just like, I know YouTube so well, like I've mastered like this, or I've mastered that aspect of YouTube, and they're always like really flaky, and they always like, there just seems to be like a weirdness about them. I can't quite put it, but it's every single time. It's always like the guys over 1 million subs who've been doing it for a few years, and they always like have like just this weird air about them. But they understand YouTube, so.
Yeah, but it's just like, honestly, and this is something that I've learned of like doing business for 10+ years and like handling Fortune 500 brands a lot, working with them, is that it's not only on YouTube this way, but it's everywhere. But it's always the people that are in between very successful and not successful. It's the very successful people have 9 out of 10 times have no ego about them. They're just like, they understand like, okay, I got lucky here and then I capitalized on that. And now, I think I have a good understanding, but I'm listening. Like I'm willing to listen to you. And most of the time it's creators that are like in that in between. It's the same with brands. Like I dealt with, Disney XD CEOs and boards, and it's always like the CEOs who are like the coolest guys, and then you have like the marketing directors that are like below that are like the fucking hyenas. They are not fun to work with. And it's the same on YouTube. It's like, if you're not quite there yet, Most of the time they are very, very ego driven. And the guys that are very, very successful, they're like, okay, let's talk. What's your hypothesis? Like, what's the Vection thumbnail? Tell me more about it. I've never heard of it. Like,
Yeah. What do you look into the channel, and what do you focus on? I know you're really big on ideate and conquer, so can you tell us more about that?
So it depends a little bit on the client and where they're at in their career, right? Like, are they established creators already that are looking to hit the next level, or are they beginner creators? So right now I'm working on 3 completely new channels that aren't even launched yet. Like, that's a whole different process. Like, first, then I want to completely understand, like, okay, what market are we entering? Where's the gap in that market? Do you bring something unique to the table? If it's an established creator already, like, I kind of can skip that step because, like, they've already established some form of uniqueness because they got to a certain point. So it depends on their stage. Let's say it's an established creator. I look at, okay, what's the market like right now, and what are your metrics like? Like, do you have a good core audience, like returning viewer base, or do you constantly have new people tapping into your videos, like, and do you struggle, for example, creating a fan base? A lot of established creators have that, for example, where they get views, but they are, I call them gray mass. They're like, they make great videos, but if you ask the viewer the day after, like, do you remember the creator of you watched that video from yesterday? Like, yeah, I don't know the name. That's kind of like the gray mass creator. And if that is a problem, I want to talk to them about, like, okay, how can we make you more colorful? So, meaning, how can we start repelling a type of viewer that is like, oh, I don't like him because he or she has that opinion, or he or she does those things, and create a stronger core fan base. They're like, I love him or her because he or she does this and that thing. So if it's that, the established creator, I want to look at that more. If it's a new creator that I'm dealing with now for quite a bit, I want to know, like, okay, how can we position you in this market to not become gray mass and become like interchangeable, a swappable asset? Like a mistake that I see a lot of new creators make as well, especially personality channels, and we've seen this a year or so back with like the Iman Gadzhi clones, and we've seen this with the Eric clones. They try to be that creator, but that makes them so forgettable because they're like, oh yeah, he did like that Eric kind of stuff. I don't remember their name. That's kind of, what I try to like figure out, like, what is the problem? It's 90% of the time it's either no core fan base really, or it's a very hardcore fan base, but really struggling to break out of that hardcore fan base that they've been serving so far.
And then when it comes to ideation, what's your process? How do you find viral video ideas to film?
My process is all over the place. It depends really on the niche that I'm in. It's like what I love to do. So, for example, when I worked with this golf client, what I love to do is like go to a completely different niche, like completely different, and see a format that did really well there. It's like, okay, how could I take this format and translate that, like make like my own bionic puppet and make it a golf video? Where it's like something like in, I don't know, the woodworking niche, or a tech documentary. It can be anything, right? So that is the far niche transferring is definitely my favorite way to find viral videos and introduce something fresh to an established niche, because not a lot of people do that and they do it correctly. So that's by far my favorite. Sometimes, honestly, I have calls with clients that we just sit on a call for an hour and we just do research. And at the end of the call, we realize, yeah, we got no further than we were at the beginning of this call. Like, we got a ton of ideas, but nothing hit. It's like, oh, whatever. And then always the day after, either on the toilet or in the shower, I have like, oh, wait, if we twist it that way, and then I take my phone in the shower. I don't know. I'm a psychopath probably. And then I stand there. Weird. Yeah, I just stand there with my iPhone, just like, wait, I have an idea. And
no, I've done that. It's always a day after. Times.
Yeah, so that's kind of like far niche transferring is definitely my favorite way to go about it. Because it's just a fun way to try and make your own bionic puppet. Like, we take the arm from that niche, and then we take a hook from a completely other niche, and that's the legs, and that's what I do most. There's one exception though, and that's the entertainment niche. So let's say let's call it the Mr. Beast, Ryan Trahan, Eric market. In that market, I like to go a little bit more outside the platform and look at entertainment as a broader thing. Sometimes I can get inspiration out of books. It's like, oh, we can do that book, that plot of that book. That could be a really good YouTube video. Just like kind of extract that out of it. Or I recently had an idea, and we're doing this with a new personality channel, I think before the end of the year. It comes from a book from the 1970s that I randomly found in a library. And I saw that plot. I was like, whoa, this could make a really great video. And there's still proof, because it's a bestseller book. So there's still proof that people like the plot. It's just not been done on YouTube. So in entertainment, I wouldn't even call it far niche transferring. I would call it far off platform transferring.
Do you do a call like weekly? Do you do one call per month? How many ideas do you come up with? Do you watch every single video of every single creator and you give feedback? What's that life of a YouTube strategist?
Yeah, so my standard, and I don't know how you guys do it, but what I do standard with the creators I work with is I have 1 hour per week that I work with them. And so with the guys I work with on a monthly retainer, they just like pay for that 1 hour a week. They get access to my phone number, and like there's more, like I would say it's more like 2 hours per week, with all the texting back and forth, and sometimes impromptu video feedback stuff that needs to happen. But normally, like let's say in the normal week, we have like an hour call together a week where we talk about, okay, action points, like how did the last video perform, what can we learn from that, what would we improve in the next one. And we have like, most of the time we have like one ideation session a month, and that session is really dedicated to like coming up with more spitballing ideas, coming up with more original stuff. And everything in between is like, it can be on call. We look at the video together. So especially when I start working with creators, I do a lot of that like sync, so not async, so that they can literally see my thought process where I say like, okay, no, don't do that. We have to cut this out, and this is why I think that. So they can kind of like download all the information that I have in my brain in their brain. And that's kind of how I go about it. So it's like 1 hour a week. It turns out to be 2 most of the weeks when it's busy, especially. And like one of the things that I always try to be is like very flexible. If like sometimes something happens, on a Sunday night, I'm 90% of the times like I can be there and I can help them and like, extinguish the fire, whatever it is. I think that's part of the territory that comes with the work.
Got it. How much do you charge?
So to work with me 1 hour a week, so like 4 hours per month is $2,000, so $2,000.
Nice.
And anything above that, so anything that is like more demanding, I have a client that pays me $6,000 a month, and it's just a little bit more demanding.
What is it you provide for $6,000?
So it's way more in-depth stuff. It's helping them build the team. It's helping them establish, a production pipeline that works. That's where one of my, and I talk about this a lot, unfair advantages. You need to like lean into them. One of my unfair advantages is that I had a content agency, brick and mortar, for 8 years. I had 15 people, full-time staff. I worked with huge brands, so I know what it's like to like establish a production pipeline and know what it's like to have kinks in the cable where you have trouble with editors or you have trouble with the footage pipelines, all that stuff. So I use that with him or them. It's a company, and I help them that way to establish like a whole production pipeline for their YouTube endeavor. But like frankly, like I made a video on this like a week ago, not even, on my personal channel that I kind of like use as a playground. It's like I do like around $25,000 a month from clients alone.
Yeah, I watched it. It's a fun video. I want to see more.
So you're talking about some of your kind of ideation process and how you gotta like do all this and that. I want to know what kind of tool stack you might use, because now we live in an age where there's tons of YouTube tools that help the ideation process, the strategy process, and everything in between. I'd love to get a rundown on what specifically you use to help come up with viral ideas. Yeah,
so it's actually not like my tool stack is not very impressive. It's actually like I probably like if we would be doctors and you would open your toolbox, it would be like, whoa, shiny things. If I would open mine, there would be like a banana peel in it, a 1 of 10 subscription.
Let's go.
Like here.
Of course, no, it's there. Like I tested few stats and I have Notion. That's it. But like literally the only thing outside of YouTube that I actually use on a day-to-day is 1 of 10. Completely honest, like I'm not even trying to plug.
I guess we go in some rapid fire stuff.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Starting off, YouTube changes a lot. Where do you think it's going to be going next, and how do you see it changing?
It's going to dominate the living room even more. Worldwide, YouTube is becoming the new Netflix. That's it. Point.
Next up, what are some of the next big projects that you personally want to take on, whether it be YouTube or your life?
Okay, so YouTube-wise, I definitely wanted to. I'm toying with the idea of getting one personality creator that hasn't started yet, that I think has a lot of talent and helping them for free for a whole year to see where I can help them get and end up. Like that is something like almost like a YouTube Got Talent kind of idea. And then like finally the guy's like, okay, this is the guy or girl, helping them for a year. That's definitely one of the big things that I want to do. Personal projects, I am toying with the idea to fight one professional kickboxing fight. I am regretting saying that out loud, but that's something that I've been thinking about for quite some time.
Next up, when it comes to YouTube, what did you spend your first YouTube paycheck on?
Ooh, I remember this exactly. I remember this. This is gonna sound so nerdy. I got a capture card, an Aver Media something capture card.
Okay.
And the funny thing about it is that I bought it, I tried to install it, and I broke it, and that was it. I had no more money, and I bought the first thing I bought was broken before I could even use it. So yeah,
nice.
Sad.
And then my last rapid fire question is: if there was one YouTuber that you can invest into, who would it be and why?
Ooh. I'm gonna say this name out loud for the first time right now, but it would be. His channel is not made yet, but his name is Lucas Blair. I'm working with him. He's LA based, and I'm putting some stonks into him. Like I'm definitely putting some money on the line here for Lucas. I think he's going to be a breakout creator next year.
Ooh, that's the first time someone has invested into someone who's not made a channel yet. That's a good one.
No,
That's a great one.
I don't know. I like that a lot because it's like it singles my DGen self, because it's like there's no reason to think that it's going to work besides me being involved and him being a talent. So I was like, I'm investing in him. And if someone sees this in a year and they look up the channel, they can be like, how wrong was this kid? Or how right was he? We'll see.
And what's your dream?
My dream, honestly, Richard, is just to be able to do YouTube for the rest of my life with clients that I love, have a healthy life, have a healthy kid that I already have, a healthy wife, travel around the world, do dumb stuff, regret things, just live, man.
Very cool. And one last question is, if you had one tip to blow up a channel from zero today, what would it be?
Focus more on research and ideation.
How long do you take to find an idea normally?
It depends a little bit on the niche, but so niche dependent. Like let's say it's a niche that I'm already pretty well versed in, then it can take less time. If it's a niche that I'm also pretty new to, sometimes it can take a week, of just like me, not like an actual week, like not in hours, but like just a week of time where I can find like that idea that I feel very strongly about. But I would say on average, an hour or 3-4, that, gives me more than enough time to like come up with an idea, validate the idea, and be either very invested in the idea or like, brush it off to the side based on the data.
Well, Leroy, thanks for joining us on the 1 of 10 podcast. A lot of great value, I'm sure. Man, I don't like. Tell me, how do I end?
How do you end this? Well, you end this by saying like, listen, if this guy was valuable, you won't believe what's coming next. Like this guy was nothing, and because of that, you should click subscribe. You should also like and let us know who you want to see on the 1 of 10 podcast. And if you don't have 1 of 10 yet, what are you doing on this channel? You want to get YouTube? You want to do better? Buy a 1 of 10 subscription. See you next time. Peace.
What Leroy said.